Have my permission.
Cool.
Continuing. Okay.
Cool. Alrighty then. Thank you for coming to this space, and thank you for allowing me to interview you. I want to start by asking, what is your name,
My
and
name is.
tell me a
I'm
little
sorry.
bit about yourself. Tell me your name and tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Terri Lynn Hudson, and I live in Chicago. I am an actor, performance artist, multidisciplinary artist, and a disability advocate.
Awesome, awesome. So, how did you start? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Let's see. How did I start is a big question.
Yeah.
I'm not originally from Chicago. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I have spina bifida, which, is present at birth. And I came up here for the first time to go to college.
Do you
I
mind?
moved.
Do you mind if I go live?
Go out, sure.
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
Okay. I came to Chicago. I visited here a lot as a kid because my mother was born here, but I came to Chicago to live for the first time when I was a freshman in college. I attended University of Chicago, and I lived here from 1991 to 1998, and then moved to Austin, Texas, and then just moved back up here in 2014.
Wow. So many so many twists and turns.
Lots of twists and turns, yeah.
Wow. Tell me about it. What's been the most most adventurous?
I mean, moving to Texas was a big adventure. I'd never been there before. I moved there for a relationship because I was in my mid 20s and I fell in love, and you do stuff like that. And it was a very interesting life down there. It wasn't really the best fit for me, and I decided I wanted to move back here, and things kept happening so that I couldn't. And then I ended up meeting someone and getting married who also wanted to live here, and so we moved back up here together.
Wow. So now you're happily married.
Happily married, 7 years and change.
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome of you. How did you get involved with the disability community?
I feel like I'm still kind of on the outskirts of it, honestly. It wasn't something I was really allowed to do very much growing up, and I sort of wish I had been. And then, like as a young adult, having just graduated college, out in the world, I didn't know what was out there for me or to help me or what have you. Like there was an Illinois Spina Bifida Association, but it mostly seemed to be like a support group for parents of small children with spina bifida. It wasn't, there didn't seem to be really any resources for adults at all back at the time. This would have been like the mid to late 90s. And when I moved to Texas, I got involved with a performance group called Actual Lives, which was formed by a deaf woman and was honestly kind of similar to Telling Tales up here in that it was, all disabled performers, and it was mostly like autobiographical stories about their lives. And that was kind of my first taste of having like a disability community. And so I've just been since then connecting more with people online. And I've joined like a lot of different, like back in the day, it was Yahoo groups and LiveJournal groups, and now Facebook groups with other disabled adults across the board, and specifically other adults with spina bifida. And just like getting to know them, seeing what people's concerns are, talking about my concerns, and, doing what we can for each other.
You coming from the outside world. I hate to say an outsider. What do you
No,
think is?
it's kind of true, really. When I see the sorts of experiences other people have who've always been plugged into a disability community, I do feel like an outsider.
Well, you know, it depends on the person. How open you are with your disability, and um, some people are more open than others, and
Yeah.
it probably took you some time to acknowledge that you had a disability, even though you probably grew up with it.
Oh, I was born with mine, and I always acknowledged it and was never like ashamed of it. And it was actually made sort of a big deal of. I was actually the first physically disabled child mainstreamed into the public school system where I lived. So, like when I was 6 years old, I was sitting in courtrooms taking IQ tests and proving that I could go into the first grade.
Wow. Here in Chicago or in
This
Texas?
was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, Atlanta, Georgia. Wow.
Yeah, that's where I was born and raised. So yeah, that was 1978, 79 in Atlanta.
Wow. I wasn't even born then. So much. Um, what do you think is missing from our community?
Well, as someone who is still kind of an outsider, I don't know if I can really speak to that. I'm still learning about the community. I've had some just interesting experiences talking to people, and I think that there are a lot of people whose just exposure to the world is really limited, which isn't their fault. And it's interesting, as someone who's moved mostly among non-disabled people, like, running into people who are my age but still live at home with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And have that kind of life and just what their perspective is like. I mean, both of my parents are deceased, and I quit living at home or anything altogether when I graduated college. And I know not all disabled people are able to do that, but it also was really messy for me, especially living in another state, because back at that point, this was like before the ACA and before a lot of other health insurance informs, and I was uninsured for years. I tried to get Medicaid and didn't qualify. And because I wasn't plugged into a disability community, there was no one to tell me, hey, you have to reapply a whole lot and you might have to get a lawyer. I applied once and I got turned down, and I thought that was it, and I never tried again.
Yeah, that's the problem, when it comes to disability, we don't know the ins and outs.
Yeah. So the fact that there's now all this robust, even just online community where people share these experiences all the time, that would have benefited me so much as a young person.
Yeah. What would you like to see more of in our community?
I would just like to see more of the community. I am, like I said, as someone who's fairly new to it, I'm still getting to know a lot of people, still figuring my way around. I really like meeting other people of color in the disability community. I find that very rewarding and enriching, and I love all of my disabled POC friends. Yeah, I'm still just finding my way around.
Okay, from what you have seen or heard or lived, do you believe that there's racism within our community or within our myths?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I've run into a lot of disabled white people who are racist against disabled POC, or just all POC, period. And that's really kind of disheartening, because I often feel like I have more in common with other disabled people across the board, until I run into that and I'm like, nope, I'm still super black in here. The disability is not being a great equalizer here. Wow, okay. I know that, like, during a lot of the protests and uprisings over the summer, I was involved in my community mutual aid and trying to especially help out other disabled people who maybe couldn't get food delivered or maybe couldn't get their attendant care through or what have you. And it was really frustrating, like, trying to help these people and having them be really, really racist at me. And I was just kind of like, are you really doing this right now? And yet there they were,
It's sad. It's really sad. Wow, we've touched on a lot in such short time. Where do I want to pick at? Tell us more about yourself. I mean, where do you work right now? What do you do?
Oh, I'm an actor, and I am very fortunate in that I get to do that full time with my husband's support. I am currently in rehearsal for one show and about to open another show. I am in the cast of How Do We Navigate Space at Straw Dog Theater, and that is going to be watchable online in a couple of days, actually, early next week, end of
Wow.
this week, something like soon. Now I want to check because I should be advertising for myself a little bit better than that. It's like when does this show start? It's a little confusing for me because I'm already rehearsing another show, so in my mind this show is over, but it's only starting. Yeah, it premieres on March 15th with Straw Dog Theater. That's a Chicago theater company. And, because it's not safe to perform on stages with everyone in a big room right now, everyone filmed parts of this show remotely and we edited things together and we collaborated online. And it's a show about dealing with the pandemic and the isolation that people have had with social distancing.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And yeah, my perspective there was a little bit different than the non-disabled people in the cast because I was like, this is not the first time I've been isolated. This is not the first time that I've been unable to come and go as I pleased. I spent honestly most of the first 18 years of my life just kind of stuck in the house by myself, So I felt like I've joked that I have a crip advantage when it comes to dealing with quarantine because I'm not new to this,
Yeah. Yeah. What would you like people to know about you that you haven't said already?
What have I not said already? I probably didn't mention that I'm queer. Hi, I'm very queer despite the fact that I'm married to a man.
Cool. How does well, there is a lot of queer people within our own community.
Yes, there are.
There are a lot of people that I know of that are queer within our own community. And they're part of it too.
Oh yeah.
But it took them some time. How did you acknowledge it?
Just the way I was raised, I didn't even understand what it was for a long time. And then once I got to college and saw other out queer people, it was just like, oh, okay. And that was really it. I didn't really struggle or anything. I just really needed like a vocabulary for it.
Cool. And what would you tell people if they were in the same situation where you were before? What would you tell them? How would you encourage them to continue?
In which situation?
Like born with a disability, it's sometimes we're taught, mommy's gonna grab your hand, daddy's gonna be there for you, and they try to put us into a big bubble, until it pops and we know that the world that we used to live in is not no more, so you said your parents died when you were young.
No, I said they're both deceased now. My mother did die when I was 6. My father only died a couple of years ago. A few years ago. Yeah.
How did you deal with that and your disability?
Losing my mother was hard. I was only 6 years old. She was a really strong advocate for me, and I do feel like some of that advocacy went away with her. And I do sometimes wonder what would have been different about my life if she had been there to support me and advocate for me as I grew up.
Yeah.
Other than that, when I turned 18, I was ready to leave. I didn't think staying home was an option for various reasons, and I looked at going to college as far away from home as humanly possible. I was good at school. I got offered a lot of scholarships, so that was kind of a non-issue for me. And I know that disability affects people differently, so that's not an option for a lot of people. But yeah, I was just like, I'm getting the first scholarship out of here, and I did that, and I navigated young adulthood messily and made a lot of mistakes and lost a lot of money and was really broke a lot of the time. But my advice there is just, that happens to everybody. Like, non-disabled people go through that, and you live and you make it, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, independence is scary, but it's also, I think, really worth it.
It is very worth it. And I did it when I was like 24, 25. I don't even remember, but
Yeah.
I wish I would have left sooner than that, but no, it didn't happen. And so I guess what I would like to ask is, besides the racism in our community, what are some things that would make it better?
My feeling there is just, we need to connect with each other. I really think it should be, and it might be because, I'm, like I keep saying, still fairly new to there being a disabled community and being connected with it on a consistent basis. Just everybody needs that. And I think that some parents have this instinct that, if my disabled kid is around other disabled kids, then their whole identity will be about being disabled and they won't know how to act around quote unquote normal people or what have you. I do think that's why I wasn't really allowed to like socialize with other disabled kids or, be a part of like programs that were offered. Because, I grew up in a big city with a big spina bifida association and a big March of Dimes and all of that stuff. And it was there. I just didn't participate in it. I was just supposed to go to my school and make friends at my school. That did not work. I didn't have any friends usually. And I'm just like, give your kids that community. They need it. It's validating. It's helpful. It's good for them. We need to see images of ourselves in the world. We need to know that we're not the only people like ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
And we need to know how to navigate the world as us. And non-disabled people can't really do that for us, which is, what I mean about like when I tried to apply for SSI and Medicaid and was told no, I didn't have any other people to tell me that there were other things that I could do or what those other things were. The non-disabled people I was around, they didn't know. How would they know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Is there anything else that you would like to see happen? Well, besides our community, what do you think is missing within the Black and Brown community?
There's ableism in every community. We're not exempt from that, and I would really like to see less of it. I would really, really like to, ask other people of color to work on their ableism. I know that racism is big and huge and often feels like the only thing that we have against us, but, if we're going to be for us, we need to be for all of us, and that includes the people with disabilities, and that includes, knowing what we need as far as help and support and how to include us.
Amen. Yeah. What else would you say is needed?
That's really the big thing. I mean, it just gets to fine tuning from there, just we are part of your community. We belong in your spaces. We deserve to be supported and listened to and heard and respected, not just tolerated or even barely tolerated.
Yep. Have you ever heard of access? Well, that's something. Have you ever heard of Access Living?
I have heard of Access Living. I follow Access Living on Facebook. I know that they offer some programs and stuff that I don't know very much about. And I need to do something about that at some point because I know that they exist as a resource. I know that they've been doing a lot of outreach into the disability community during COVID and trying to advocate for people with disabilities, to get medical priorities that we don't currently have and stuff like that, or that we sort of have at this point.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I can introduce you to one of my awesome, I call her my sister, Candace. and I can introduce you to her. She's also a person with a disability, and it'll be pretty cool to get to know. So you get to know her. Um, but otherwise, do you have any last words?
Um, Check out How Do We Navigate Space? Straw Dog Theater opens on the 15th.
Opens on the 15th. You heard it,
Yep.
people. All right. Is there a way that people can follow you on Facebook or
Yep.
on YouTube or whatever?
I have a fan page on Facebook, Terri Lynn Hudson, and you can like it and follow it, and that'll tell you what I'm doing career wise.
Cool. Okay. Awesome, man. Thank you for allowing me to do this, and I apologize for all those times that I had something come up. Things come up, Today I got my second vaccine.
Woo! I got my first one yesterday.
What? Wow. How do you
Yep,
feel?
there's my Band-Aid.
How do you feel about that?
I'm relieved. I feel a lot less scared than I did before I got it. It's like, okay, I might actually survive this COVID thing.
Yeah. Which one did you get?
I got the Moderna.
Moderna. That's
So I go back in 4 weeks for my second shot.
Yeah, that's the same one I got.
Yeah.
Moderna. So, is there anything you would like to say to encourage Black and Brown people to get their vaccine?
Oh my goodness, yes. Y'all, this disease is killing us. It's killing us disproportionately. Please protect yourselves. I know that there's a lot that seems scary about it and that it seems rushed. It's because it's an emergency level situation. We need to survive this. I know we've got other issues. If we're going to fight them, we need to survive this. Please get vaccinated. Please, please, please.
All right, you heard it from her. Get your vaccines. I got my second one today. Soon I'll be able to go out and about and maybe do these interviews in person. Who knows? I gotta wait 2 weeks. How after the second one you have to wait 2 weeks, and then
right.
I still gotta wear my damn mask. But hey, that's something that I
masks save lives. Everybody wear your mask.
Wear your freaking mask. All right. Take care.
You too. Great talking to you.
Nice talking to you too.
I'm enjoying that. It's nice.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, it's nice outside, It's been a heck of a winter. I mean, a heck of a summertime, but otherwise it's been nice weather outside. I'm gonna go straight into the questions.
Okay.
I have a few set of words, and you can expand on those words and give your opinion on each of those words.
Okay.
So let's start with the first one. Justice.
Justice. Oh, what justice means to me is that all people, particularly marginalized people, have the sort of lives and opportunities that everyone else does. It means an evened level playing field. It means evened out resources. It means people's needs being met wherever their needs are.
Okay. Thank you. I added this one because there's a whole lot going on with women's rights right now, especially in Texas, and something that's coming up in the Supreme Court. So the word is reproductive rights.
That's a complicated one because it means different things for different people. And when I say that, I mean that we need to be talking about things like sex education, especially in the disability community. We need to talk about forced sterilization in the disability community. We need to talk about the rights of disabled people to have families if we want them, which has been, a fight throughout history. And I think that it does get oversimplified, and it's easy to do that, like when you've got things going on, like, people trying to overturn Roe v. Wade, but it's a really complicated conversation. And it's got different meanings for people with disabilities, in my opinion.
Okay. So this one, the following one is a combination of three words.
Okay.
Disability rights,
Mm-hmm.
disability justice, and injustice.
Okay. Wow, you gave me some hard things to think about today.
Yeah, and take as much time as you want. Seriously, there's no pressure.
Sure.
That's why we started early, because I know that we said a certain time, but I was like, I'm on right now. Might as well do this now, because these questions are something to think about.
Absolutely. Well, the justice versus injustice that you laid out there, I feel like a lot of disability injustice comes from basically not letting us have autonomy, or trying to stop us from having autonomy, or deciding that we don't need or don't deserve autonomy. There's a lot, when we're talking about things going on in the media right now, conservatorships are a big deal because of Britney Spears, and that's, ostensibly controlling someone because you think that they can't make decisions for themselves. And I think that a lot of non-disabled people think that disabled people, regardless of disability, can't make decisions for ourselves, or that even if we need assistance with some making decisions, that our opinions and feelings about the decisions about our lives don't count because we're disabled and we don't know as well as they do. So I think that justice for us is listening to us, listening to our wants and needs, getting out of our way when we need people to get out of our way is a big one, and not withholding resources if we need resources.
Is there anything else you want to add to it?
Okay, so that was disability justice, disability injustice. What was the third thing?
Okay. The third thing was disability rights.
Yeah. And so disability rights, if I kind of take what I just said and spin it around, it's about our rights to be self-actualized people who have our needs met. And that happening is justice, and that not happening is injustice. There you go.
Okay. So this one is a question that I just came up with right now. So I'm just gonna throw it. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Okay.
So when we look at disability rights and how it was written and who wrote the laws of disability rights. Mm-hmm. Now, people argue with me that there was all types of people in the background working on it. But when you look at the pictures, when you look at the day it was signed, it's all white people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, do you think that there was in some way like our voices being heard that day, that this law was being written? Or do you think that it should like be written, revised in a way that includes everyone's voice?
Oh, I mean, when you look at the people in the room, like legislatively, the overwhelming majority of elected officials that we've ever had have been, heterosexual, cisgender, usually affluent, abled white men. And so that's who's going to be in the room. Now, who their constituency is, that's who, like, the ADAPT people and the other disability activists went to go and communicate with and tell them what we needed and try to, change their opinions so that they would go in that room with our agenda. But I do think that there is a point where there's still sort of like a filter between what we say and what non-disabled people hear, and like what non-people of color hear. And, that they kind of filter that out, like, okay, well, this is a little much. Let's make this a little bit more reasonable. And, identity politics are complicated because, there's a disabled man running Texas right now who does not care about other disabled people at all. So, it's like, okay, does it matter that there's a disabled person in the room if they're terrible? Or would we rather have an ally in the room who is willing to go to bat for us, who maybe doesn't share our identity? That can go either way.
You're right. That can go either way. Ooh, okay, here's another one. Here's another one of those 2 or 3 layer words. It's 2.
Okay.
Racism and disability racism.
Oh, disability racism. Okay, so
take as much as you want.
No, I've got this one. There's a good friend of mine who is a social justice activist and advocate who mentions a lot that when we talk about other marginalized identities, that people default to thinking that that's always going to be a white person. Like, when there are conversations about disability, what people are picturing is a white disabled person and how the world works for a white disabled person. And it's not the same as the world works for a disabled person of color. So there is I've run into a lot of racism in the disability community, unfortunately, among white disabled people who have still been raised in white supremacy and still have white supremacist values. And the fact that they're disabled doesn't stop that. So there's a lot of complexity there. A lot of people of color aren't believed about our disabilities and medical conditions. We are assumed to be in less pain and to be faking things a lot, where a lot of white people don't experience that. And I'm not saying they never do, but it's not as prevalent as it is with us. And a lot of disability conversations revolve around someone whose only marginalization is disability and does not take into account race, class, or honestly even gender sometimes. So that's a big hurdle that we've got to get over, is to explain that, there was a white deaf man in the news recently who was arrested for not responding to a police officer. And a lot of conversations around that came into, okay, but like if that were a black deaf guy, he'd probably be dead. And this guy got roughed up and ended up in jail and is probably going to sue, and suing is great. But if this were a black dude, he'd be dead. If this were a Latino dude, he could also be dead because of the disparity at which police treat, black and brown people versus white people.
You absolutely nailed it. Couldn't have said it any better than what you just said. Environmental and climate change.
Oh, this is a fun one because, we're all a gigantic drain on the environment and we use too much disposable stuff. And that has been such a conversation over the last couple of years, especially with COVID, where we're using a ton of disposable things all of a sudden because it's better for the safety of everyone right now. And disabled people are understandably a little upset about this, going, oh, but like I was a burden on society when I needed a straw or a catheter or a mask or something like that, 2 years ago, but now everybody gets them and it's fine. Really? So it's just talking about what's considered necessary, when certain things are only needed if everyone needs them versus we've needed them the whole time, because our bodies are different and we need different things. We need different tools and devices to stay alive and, take as good care of our bodies as we can. There are a lot of medical devices that used to be, I guess, more environmentally sound because they were reusable, but they were killing people because, ordinary people don't have autoclaves in our home. We can't sterilize metal to the extent that hospitals can. So a disposable device is safer. And when you talk about disability and environmental justice, you have to come at that with disabled people have the right to be alive and to take care of our bodies and to be here. Otherwise, you're being genocidal about, well, the planet needs to live, so no one should have any plastic disposables ever, and you should all just die. Because a lot of environmental activists basically come out like that, even if that's not their exact words.
Okay. Out of all the words that I have listed here, what would you change if you had the power?
I mean, disability justice is a big umbrella term here that could apply to a lot of these things. Because honestly, every single word that you said can be viewed through a disability justice lens. And I think that when we have justice for disabled people, ability is a temporary thing. Any non-disabled person can become disabled at any time. And I think making a world that is safer and friendlier for disabled people makes a world that is safer and friendlier for everybody.
I'm planning to host I'm planning to host a panel discussion sometime late November or December.
Mhm.
If you are available, would you be able to come to this event?
Absolutely. I would love to.
Yeah, it would be via Zoom because, COVID wise and.
Yep, Zoom is the best. I would totally be willing to. I'd love it.
Okay. And the last thing is, you have any advice you can give to other people who may be going through the same things that you have experienced in your life, and any last words you want to say or anything you want to say?
Keep fighting. It's worth it. That's pretty succinct, but that's what it kind of boils down to for me. Keep fighting. It's worth it.
Yeah. All right. Well, this interview was pretty short, and I just wanted to get this last piece out. And late November or December, you should hear back from me on a panel, because what I'm planning to do is, like, put your two videos together.
Okay.
And in the panel, we're gonna take as much time as we can and view each video of each person and see if people's views have changed, if it's something that they would like to add to what they said already. So, yeah. And have a conversation, an honest dialogue with others.
That sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. Thank you for your time.
You have a great day.
All right, you too.